Hey, how's it going, everybody? It's your boy, Haha Joker Man, and today we're going to be going ahead and switching over to a different anime this time around. Now, we are still going to go back to Demon Slayer. Sadly, as it is, I haven't had time to go watch the Demon Slayer movie and give my opinion on it yet, so we're going to wait for it to hit Crunchyroll and get that video out to you guys at another time once it hits Crunchyroll. But as it is, this anime is just as good. Fairly new, it's been out for a little bit, but obviously it's got a lot of people talking about it because it is a very good anime. That anime is being Solo Leveling. Now, Solo Leveling is very good because, in my opinion, right, it kind of reminds me of Sword Art Online. If you haven't seen it, it's like a video game type anime. You know what I'm saying? Which Solo Leveling does give off that vibe, but it's just a little bit more serious, I would say. But with all that being said, man, let's go ahead, do a nice little review and recap of Solo Leveling from episode 1 all the way to where we're at currently. So pretty much in Solo Leveling, to start off, to kind of give you the layout what it is, these gates start appearing in Solo Leveling that connects the human world to another dimension. Now, with these gates opening up, these gates essentially let magic and mana into the human world, which affect people differently, and some more than others, some negative more than others. Now, in this world, because of how the magic affects certain people, the magic essentially gives certain humans powers, and these humans that have these powers are called hunters. Now, these hunters are pretty much in charge of, but different hunters do different things, you know what I'm saying? So getting more into that, the hunters are essentially in charge of, when these gates appear, to go into these gates, conquer these dungeons, and the gate will close. Now, some of these gates are stronger than others, which kind of brings in the ranking system of these different hunters, along with the different dungeons that these rankings have, from S tier all the way down to E tier, which being the lowest, and all in between you have A, B, C, and of course D tier. Now, depending on the amount of magic and mana you have determines what tier you are. But also, these rankings cannot change, right? So if you are an attacker, which we kind of get a glimpse of in the first episode, in the first couple seconds to a minute of Solo Leveling, we see an S tier attacker. Very quick, very fast, very strong. You have those, you have attackers, you have majors, you have healers. Just all depends on what magic you have. But the thing of it is that not only can your tier not change at all, so an S tier can never be an A tier, an A tier can never be a B tier, and vice versa, unless you have something called a second awakening, which pretty much means that you have, it's very rare that it happens, but you pretty much, if you're a B tier, something would have to happen, and it hasn't been explained yet because there hasn't been someone with a second awakening yet to our knowledge of the anime. Once again, it might have said something in the manga. I don't read the manga, so basing it just off the anime, nobody has had a second awakening technically. We'll get more into that later on, but so far from what we know, there is no way for you to change your rankings at all. The other thing is too, is that if you are an attacker, you cannot use magic. You can't be a healer if you're an attacker. You know what I'm saying? Your magic is just solely based on whatever you have. So if you're a strong attacker, if you're a tanker, you can't switch between the two. It's either or, and that's it. Now, because of this, and also because of the fact that you cannot rank up in any way, it's not like you can do 10,000 push-ups, 10,000 sit-ups, and then if you're a A tier attacker, you can become an S tier. That's not how it works. It's already set, it's already fixed. Now, with that being said, there are ways that you can make yourself stronger and make yourself more of a valuable person when it comes to being in these certain raids and things of that nature. You could have maybe some kind of background in something in real life that will make you be a better whatever you are. So if you are an attacker, right, and let's say you train in jiu-jitsu, right? These things can help you, or if you train in taekwondo or whatever the case is, these things can help you because you have a knowledge and basis of how to do certain things in real life that can assist you in raids and so on and so forth. But literally, that's the extent of it. But when it comes down to the rest of the seasons, the rest of the episodes, we then get into our actual main character being Jinwoo. Now, Jinwoo is an E tier, which, once again, at this point in time, is the lowest tier, and he's the only one who is an E tier out of any other hunter. Now, once again, with doing these raids and so on and so forth, you can die within these raids. There is no like reset button or nothing like that. If you die, you die, and that is it. Now, with that, you have to be cautious of what ranked dungeons you are doing. If you are an A tier doing an S tier dungeon, could you make it through? Maybe. But if you're a B tier doing an S tier, you're probably not going to make it out of that dungeon. You know what I'm saying? Now, with that being said, Jinwoo's situation and why he is doing these dungeons is predicated on the fact that when these gates had opened, it affected his mom in a different way. It pretty much made her very sick and put her into some kind of coma state. And with that, he is doing these raids and doing these gates in order to earn money to pay for her hospital bills and so on and so forth. Now, once again, depending on whatever dungeon you're doing, whatever rank that dungeon is, will obviously determine the amount of money or amount of resources or whatever the case you might get. Because based on the beginning, the episode 1, when we saw our S tier fighter in the midst of a fight in the midst of a dungeon, he is in a guild. There is multiple people, multiple hunters that are going to be A, B, C tier, or whatever, assisting in this big dungeon. Now, it's hasn't been explained what dungeon that specifically was, but if I had to guess, it was probably an S tier dungeon. And with that, you can obviously get a lot of rewards and a lot of stuff to help increase your guild if you are in one. Which, once again, there are multiple guilds that you can be in. It's not like it's just one, but some guilds might have more S tier rank hunters in them, which will make that guild a little bit stronger than other guilds. But getting back into our main character, Jinwoo, once again, his purpose of why he does these raids is a little bit different than just something as a guild. As he enters this low rank dungeon, he essentially can't really do too much. You know what I'm saying? There's not really much that's asked of him to do to really assist, because once again, he's an E tier in comparison to others who are maybe a D or a C tier. Which, again, is it that staggering? Probably not. But again, fighting these monsters that are in these dungeons, it can be, you know what I'm saying? And it could be a hindrance at points. And he is friends with a girl who is a healer, and I believe she's a B tier healer if I'm not mistaken. But she does these lower tier dungeons just to be on the safe side, which again, there's no problem with that. If you are a S tier doing C tier dungeons for whatever reason, you should be perfectly fine. You ain't got nothing to worry about, you know what I'm saying? Which, in her case, less risk, you know what I'm saying? So, now after this dungeon is cleared, one of the people that are in this raid party realizes that there is a double door dungeon that has somehow appeared within this dungeon. Now, they assumed that because these double doors were in this dungeon, that it would just be, you know, a high reward, maybe a little bit stronger, nothing to be too worried about, right? Here's the thing, right? If you know anything about video games, if there is 2 big doors that you can walk through, just know on the other side of those doors is going to be a big ass problem. And if you are not ready for that problem, don't go through those doors. But once again, it is what it is. They still go through the doors, And let's just say things didn't pan out too well within this dungeon. Once again, I'm not going to spoil anything, but I'm going to just leave it at that. But at the end of this, Jinwoo, our main character, actually ends up in the hospital. And he has somehow unlocked this thing called the system. Now, the system is what makes this anime more so video game-ish. As I explained to you guys early on in this video, there is no way for you to up your ranking within the world. There's no way you can do it. But with the system, he is able to. If he does certain amount of push-ups, certain amount of sit-ups, things of this nature, he can increase his ranking. Certain people within the guild had found out about this double door dungeon that they had went through, and they heard about the victims and the people that survived the dungeon. Obviously, Jinwoo being one of them, they went ahead and sought him out to see how an E rank survived the dungeon. They assumed that it was a second awakening. And once again, this kind of sets the precedent on why reawakenings are so rare. If people from other guilds are coming to find out more information on why you survived this particular dungeon, they went ahead, reevaluated him, and he is still an E-ranked hunter. But they don't notice the system. The only person who can see the system is Jinwoo. And with that, he then figures out that, the system is telling him to do these certain objectives. And with that, he gets skill points. He can get weapons. He can get all these different things just how you would in a video game. Since he can get these skill points could go to different things: strength, speed, agility, intelligence, whatever. This allows him to be able to use certain abilities that other hunters cannot. Like I said, if you are an attacker, you can't do tank stuff. You can't do mage things. You can't heal. You know what I'm saying? You are set and locked in as an attacker, and that's it. Jinwoo, on the other hand, can use different things that allow him to pretty much essentially navigate through being able to heal, being able to be an attacker, so on and so forth. Now, skipping a little bit way ahead, there is other things outside of being a mage or an attacker or a tanker. There is something called an assassin, right? Now, this kind of seems where Jinwoo is heading to be more of an assassin type build, if you would. But once again, we'll get into that a little bit more later on as far as specifics go. As of right now, he is using his skill points primarily towards strength because he feels like that's really what's going to help him get so much stronger to face certain raids and do certain dungeons. Now, here's the thing about all this. Him being able to unlock these different skill points and whatever, and what he can add to, and having these certain weapons and so on and so forth, he is also able to get certain equipment or keys that unlock dungeons on their own. Like I said, dungeons are normally open by gates, not by humans. These gates just appear on their own. Jinwoo's system, if he, I assume, does certain objectives and things of that nature, the system will give him a key that will allow him to unlock the dungeons on his own. Now, this has not been said in the anime yet, but he has been doing these dungeons on his own. I don't know if he can have someone assist him with these dungeons, but as it is, he does them on his own. And after he gets to a certain level or a certain point that he feels like he has noticeably seen that he is stronger, he ends up using a key that the system has given him to access this dungeon. And he makes his way through this dungeon, and he finds himself fighting a certain opponent within this dungeon. Now, the thing is too with the system is that it allows him to read the certain enemies, just like it would in a video game. If your enemy's name, like he fights goblins, you'll see goblins, but it will be green. And within this dungeon, he ends up at, a little bit early on in the dungeon, he ends up fighting these wolves, which are kind of orange. So they're close to his level. And then you have obviously whatever enemy's name, but it's in red. Probably would be out of your level. You know what I'm saying? So him going into this dungeon, somewhat not knowing what to expect, he does know that he's going to have to fight a dungeon boss at the end of it, which he ends up doing. I'm not going to go into details who the boss was, but he ends up getting into a interesting fight, and with that he gets a weapon from defeating this dungeon. This weapon is very essential throughout the rest of the anime because this is essentially the only weapon he uses throughout the whole anime. And on top of that, we do see, if you do pay close attention to it, in his inventory that he has, the system's inventory or whatever, he does have other weapons. He just chooses to use this particular weapon. Now, this weapon obviously comes with a special effect that if it makes contact with someone, it does poison them. It does give them, paralyzed, or it does help drop their health and things of that nature. So kind of obvious on why he uses it so much, but it is a pinnacle of the anime for him. So now after Jinwoo defeats this dungeon, he does notice later on that there are some actual physical appearance differences with his body because of all the things that the system has him doing, the daily objectives between the push-ups and the sit-ups or whatever. Pretty much the system is making him stronger, and with that he does feel confident enough to do these other dungeons that have came up. Now, in order to get access to these other dungeons, you do need to be with a raid party. You can't just do a dungeon by yourself. Of course, his situation with the key is something totally different. What it seems like in this world, just like if you were just looking for a job or whatever the case in real life, looking for a raid to do a dungeon is simply the same thing. You just go on, I guess, some kind of website or whatever, and you'll see a raid party and they'll be asking for X amount of people. You must be this rank or whatever to join or whatever. Jinwoo does. He ends up joining this raid party that is doing I believe it's a C rank level dungeon or something like that. But he ends up getting introduced to a kid named Jinho. Now Jinho is wearing pretty much decked out. You know what I'm saying? But this dude's nothing but a D-ranked hunter. Now, obviously, everybody still assumes that Jinwoo is still just a regular E-ranked hunter. But essentially where he's at right now, he could be rivaling C-rank at this point. You know what I'm saying? But nobody's going to know that but him. Now, Jinho, he has all this armor or whatever. He's decked out. So his father has money. His father runs a construction site, and he's essentially trying to build a guild. But in order to do that, you need a lot of resources, and not just resources, you need S-tier hunters to go along with your guild. Like I said, there are different guilds within solo leveling, but it's just some guilds have more S-tier ranked hunters than others. So that means these S-tier ranked guilds, or not S-tier ranked guilds, but these guilds that have a lot of S-tier ranked hunters, they can easily do more S-tier ranked dungeons, which means more profit for them, more money for them, so on and so forth. But Jinho's dad is trying to do that, and essentially all this armor and all this flash or whatever, it's whatever in comparison to what Jinwoo's trying to do, and that's essentially do more raids, make more money, pay for his mom's hospital bills. Now, with that being said, he goes into this raid with this raid party, and he starts noticing things that are weird. He noticed one of them is a tanker, another one is more of an archer, there's another one that's a mage, and there's another one that's attacker. But with them at the current ranks that they are, which is around C rank, there's no healer with them, which is very weird to him because most raid parties have at least one healer, which makes sense. They should. And Jinho is not a healer. He's more so what it seems like is an attacker. So it's kind of giving some weird vibes for Jinwoo. that there is no healer in this raid party. Now, one thing that there is to mention is that obviously there are bad people within solo leveling, and when it comes to these dungeons, what happens in these dungeons typically stays within these dungeons. If you were to kill someone within these dungeons, it's not like you will get arrested, back out of the gate. You won't get arrested for it because, like I said, typically what happens in these dungeons stays within the dungeon. So it is what it is. And there are some raid parties that will take advantage of a situation, and they will have you off just to collect whatever it is, not just the materials and things of that nature from the dungeon, but maybe just take stuff off of you also, which Jinho flashing these armors and swords and all this other stuff, all this flashy stuff, doesn't make the situation any better. So essentially what ends up happening at this point in time is that the raid party essentially leaves Jinwoo and Jinho into this raid to essentially face the dungeon boss and leave them there to die, and they will finish off whatever's left of the dungeon boss, collect whatever equipment that they need and everything like that, because once again, to their knowledge, it's nothing but a D rank and an E ranked hunters, so it shouldn't be any problem whatsoever. But obviously, not knowing that Jinwoo is very strong now, he ends up taking on the dungeon boss. I wouldn't say with no problem. He kind of struggles a little bit, but essentially he takes him out with no issue. And this is a surprise to Jinho because to him, he's an E rank, but he moves around and fights like he is a C or even a B ranked hunter. So this is throwing him off big time. But once again, after some time has passed, the raid party leader, they come back and notice that not only is the dungeon boss defeated, but these two are still alive. So something's gonna have to happen here, and as it is, they can't just leave Jinwoo and Jinho here and just collect whatever's left in the raid. Now this is when we notice something a little bit different about the system. The system, even though it is assisting him help him grow as a hunter and things of that nature, the system left him with an ultimatum. Now this ultimatum obviously was going to happen regardless, because that raid party wasn't going to let them leave that dungeon alive. It's just the way it is. But it's just the fact that the system gave him an ultimatum. He had to defeat the six members in that raid party, or the system was going to stop his heart. Now, once again, this is all, it really didn't matter because he was going to have to defeat them anyways. But I guess possibly Jinwoo was going to try to maybe render them unconscious or whatever the case is. That might have been his plan, and then try to escape the dungeon. The system wants him to kill them, or the system will kill him. That's pretty much what the system is giving him as an ultimatum. And well, yeah, it's something interesting. It definitely is something interesting to watch. Once again, I'm not going to spoil it, but feel free to check it out. But pretty much after everything is said and done, after this whole thing with the system now has given him these certain abilities that he has unlocked now, which once again, what he had to do to get these abilities, he didn't want to do. But regardless of it, his ultimate goal is very simple. He has to do what he has to do in order to help his mom. After that situation with the dungeon was over, pretty much Jinwoo tells Jinho to pretty much keep everything on the hush-hush. That obviously he is not an E-ranked, but he doesn't want his business out there like that, and so on and so forth about the whole situation. Along with him telling him that, we do get a glimpse of another S-tier ranked hunter. This S-tier ranked hunter, I believe, is either I think he's the younger brother to the person who was leading that raid party that, he didn't make it out of, essentially. And this hunter knows of the two people who survived that dungeon, And obviously he's already speculating that he's the reason, that these two are the reason why his brother did not make it out of that dungeon. Now, after all that is done with, man, Jinho decides that, you know what, this guy's strong. Let me see if I can recruit him. You know what I'm saying? Let's see if we can get this thing going. Because once again, Jinho's thing is that he's trying to do all of these different dungeons and so on and so forth to get a guild going for his dad. Which again, you need more than just doing dungeons in order to have a guild, at least a good one. You know what I'm saying? You need S tier ranked hunters, and S tier ranked hunters aren't just laying around. You know what I'm saying? Sometimes, in some cases, you might have to poach an S tier rank hunter from another guild, and that's kind of frowned upon to do. You know what I'm saying? So there's obviously other things that go into making a guild, but Jinho is doing everything that he can to make this happen. And he knows one of his best chances to get this to happen is to get Jin Woo on his side and try to make the best of this situation of that, well, I know your secret, I'm willing to keep it a secret, but you got to help me out type thing. Now, Jinho, kindly declines. He just wants to do his own thing, rank up, level up, do his own thing, defeat certain dungeons, so on and so forth, because he has a complete different goal in mind. But obviously, everything is subject to change, which brings in a big change, which also brings in a big time enemy that Jinho has to fight. Throughout his training, he ends up ranking up to a certain point where he gets another key. Now, this key is a little different. This key came with a type of elixir, right? Our chance to get an elixir, right? This elixir can cure any disease. That's what Jinwoo's mother has, is some type of disease that has her in a coma. Now, this is big time for him. This is what he's essentially been waiting for. Now, he doesn't have to do all of this X, Y, and Z and yada yada. All he needs is this elixir, which we know is not going to be easy. So he goes through the gate, right? And he actually ends up at a little bit later, or a little bit earlier point, he actually ends up getting this ruin that allows him to teleport out of dungeons, which this is going to be very essential. So he ends up going into this dungeon and he ends up fighting this enemy. I'm not going to get into details who the enemy was, just like previous, because I don't want to spoil too much. But, this is a fight. This is a very, very good fight. Animation on point. Everything is great. But here's the thing. After he defeats this enemy, he doesn't even get the elixir. He just gets the recipe for the elixir. The ingredients to the elixir is in this big ass castle that this man barely made it through this fight. And this wasn't even in the castle. This was outside of the castle. He hasn't even gone into the castle yet. So he then realizes, I gotta get stronger. I gotta level up. But he knows he cannot do raids without drawing more suspicion to himself. Being an E rank, which everybody still knows, he is a E ranked level hunter. He cannot be doing these C tier and B tier dungeons without drawing attention to himself, and on top of that, doing them by himself. So he has to go back to Jinho and tell him, you know what? Okay, I'll do it. You know what I'm saying? I'll run with you. We'll get a raid party going of, people that won't be subject to turn on us like the last one did. We'll do it, but it's only going to be us two going into the raids, which that's essentially what it was for quite some time. It's really just them two going into these different dungeons. They just have the people with them, and they're not even going into the dungeons with them. They're just waiting outside, chilling on their phones, just collecting whatever little bit of money they can from just being there. Now, eventually, Jinwoo actually ends up going to do a dungeon on his own, a little D-tier dungeon, and he runs into some of the people that were with him in the Double Doors dungeon in the beginning of the season, which Didn't go too well, but these were some of the survivors that were with him, along with the healer that was a B tier. I'm assuming they're friends of some kind, associates, or whatever the case is, but the B tier healer was there also to do this little D rank dungeon. But here's the other thing. They have some other people there with them. There's some people that were prisoners that they did something or whatever, but they are hunters. They were just prisoners. And the person who's keeping them in check is a B tier hunter. This hunter was one of the people that were in the hospital with Jinwoo when he got out of that double doors dungeon. He was one of the people there that was reevaluating him to see if he had a second awakening. But right now he is just there to monitor these prisoners. They're trying to reduce their sentence, reduce their prison time by doing dungeons. From what I'm getting from it, these prisoners were in prison because they had killed somebody, and they will kill the girl. And the girl's father paid the B tier hunter to pretty much, when they go into this dungeon, I want you to kill them. And he was going to do it anyways because apparently this dude is crazy or something like that. But getting into what I was saying about previously about Jinwoo's being more of an assassin tier type hunter, this guy is an assassin tier hunter. He has certain abilities, and he has this ability, how he moves is like a dash. It makes him way faster, but he has this also like assassin ability that's able to cloak him and make him completely invisible, and you can't sense him, you can't smell him, nothing. You won't know where he's at until he attacks you. So within these survivors that were there were three paths essentially, right? The prisoners went down one, Jinwoo and the mage, or not the mage, but the healer and another one went down another path, and these two other guys went down another path. So those are those three paths that were taken. The other two paths ended up coming together at some point in time. So while this B rank hunter was killing the prisoners, the other two guys, the other two survivors, ended up walking all the way around and making it back to where he was killing them. And obviously he can't let them talk, so he ended up knocking them off also. Now, obviously, Jinwoo doubles back after hearing all the screaming and stuff, and he ends up going up one-on-one against this hunter. And once again, similar situation as before when he had to deal with the raid group in the previous dungeon. Once again, the system gave him an ultimatum, which, once again, the ultimatum's already there because this guy's not letting anybody leave this dungeon alive. So he ends up going against them 1v1, and once again, very good fight, very good animation, and he ends up getting, at the end of it, his assassin ability. And once again, they fight very similar, so this is why I feel as if that Jinwoo's type of fighting is that of an assassin, because they are very similar in how they move, how they attack, and so on and so forth. Now, once again, this guy that Jinwoo ended up defeating, this guy isn't no, you know what I'm saying? This guy's not no slouch, you know what I'm saying? This guy was with a guild. So this is not going to go unnoticed, but because of how his mentality was and things of that nature, they kind of just let it go, essentially, because he was crazy. But like I said, there were two people in the beginning of the season that went to reevaluate Jinwoo and see if he had a second awakening. The second guy was the one who approached him about his colleague, I would say, being defeated within that dungeon. This guy is, I believe he's either an A or a B tier, but he is definitely stronger than Jinwoo. And Jinwoo even stated it in the anime that if he had to go toe to toe with this guy right now, he ain't gonna win it. That's for sure, he ain't gonna win. Getting into the last episode of the season, this was peak. Alright, this was peak. So what ends up happening is that throughout all of his leveling up, doing all of the the raids with Jinho and all this other stuff, right? Doing everything like that. The system ends up giving him a job change quest. Now, it is not specified what this really means, but he ends up doing it, and this ends up unlocking another gate. Now, this is different because this is not a key unlocking the gate. This is something else that is unlocking this specific gate. Obviously, Jinwoo goes in, sees what this is about. Obviously, he has confidence that he'll be fine, but he goes in just to see what this is about. He's approached by a knight with silver armor or whatever, and he's kind of struggling against them because the dagger that he has isn't penetrating the armor. So he ends up having to go kind of hand-to-hand combat, but there's also like these mage type knights also in there too, very heavily armored also, but they're doing magic. And there's some ones that have range, they're shooting arrows at him, but they're also heavily armored too. So he's doing a lot of fighting within this dungeon right now, but he has to do it a lot with just his hands. But after he makes his way through all of these different knights, he ends up making his way to the boss of the dungeon. Now, this is where this gets really good, because now this is probably one of the very few times since it has happened in the beginning of season 1 with the Double Doors dungeon that he has felt a presence or sensed the presence similar to this, and it's coming all from one person. And this person, monster, whatever you want to call it, his name is Knight Commander Icarus, and he essentially is guarding this throne room that is completely empty. But I guess that is more so towards his loyalty to that throne room that is empty, but he still guards it. But Icarus he looks dope, you know what I'm saying? Red armor, he looks clean, dope sword, you know what I'm saying? He looks the part. And when I tell you, not just looking the part, but he is giving Jinwoo that work, bro. I low-key was a little worried. I'm like, bro, this ain't looking good. And don't get me wrong, throughout this series, Jinwoo has been into some fights, you know what I'm saying? But him having to reference the feeling of being in that Double Doors dungeon, like in the beginning, and now he's got to fight this dude. But here's the thing too, within this fight, he notices that Icarus is not only just with this armor on or whatever, having the defense, and once again, just like the knights from before, his dagger is not able to penetrate his armor. But not just with the defense, but Icarus is matching him speed for speed. And once again, Jinwoo has been leveling up, and once again, he is an assassin type tier, it seems. So one of his strongest things that he is able to do is speed, and even that is getting matched. So he's in a tough go. And there was a dope point in this anime where Jinwoo essentially is like, I can't use this dagger, you know what I'm saying? I can't use this right now. He ends up putting it back in his inventory, and Icarus sees this, and Icarus is like, oh, so you're not going to use weapons? Shit. Puts his blade into the ground. This man had 2 daggers on his back. Hadn't even used them yet. And to be honest with you, they weren't even used in the fight. That's probably going to be the only spoiler I'm going to really give you. But he has 2 daggers on his back. Didn't even use them motherfuckers. He took them shits off, threw them on the ground. He said, okay, then we can throw these hands too. Because you must not know. You think because I'm a knight, I need this sword? And I don't need this. If you want to go hand to hand, hey, let's go. We can throw these hands. And it did not change nothing. Icarus was still going in on him. But even after the fight with Icarus, the job change quest still not over. With that, I kind of finished episode 11 of Solo Leveling. As it is, Solo Leveling, I've kind of gone over a little bit of my rating system on how I do animes, you know what I'm saying? Storytelling, that's for me number 1. Number 2, your protagonist, how he's portrayed and stuff like that. Number 3, your antagonist, how he's portrayed, stuff like that. Number 4 being animation. How is the animation and stuff like that? And number 5, would I recommend this anime to somebody? So, number 1, protagonist. I fuck with it. Jinwoo is a good protagonist. You can see where how much he's changed, not just physically, but how much he's changed mentally from the beginning to where he's at now. But also, you can see how much now the system is affecting certain things and certain choices he makes when it comes to him being forced to choose between a human life and his own life, right? So there's that. There's always that subtlety there, but I like it. You know what I'm saying? I do like it. I will say that. Antagonist. Now, here's my thing, right? He has had good fights with certain antagonists throughout the series so far, but they're not antagonists. You know what I'm saying? They're not his, how you would say, his quote unquote opposite. The closest we've gotten so far, I'm gonna be honest with you, is Icarus. Icarus, I'm telling you, that fight scene, bruh, that is, if there was anybody close to him right now that his opposite, is definitely Icarus. Icarus is that dude in this anime right now as far as an antagonist goes. But he's had some other close calls with other antagonists, other enemies throughout the season, but they're not, you know what I'm saying, they're not his opposite just yet. You know what I'm saying? So we haven't seen that dude just yet, but I got a feeling it's on its way. You know what I'm saying? So there's that. Storytelling, on point. I like how the story is going so far. Nothing seems rushed. There's still a lot of things to be explained. You know what I'm saying? Once again, if you read the manga, maybe they're already explained, but on just based on the anime aspect of it, there are some things that need to be explained. But again, it's still early on in the, not only just the season, but it's early on in the show itself. So I feel like you'll get around to it. You'll get more information on the system and things of that nature. And on top of that too, there's other protagonists within the series. The other S tier rank hunters, they are involved in the story that I didn't really harp on too much, but they're just kind of here and there for the time being. They're just kind of in the background, but they will play a big role later on. And the other thing is that would I recommend the anime? 100%. Solo Leveling right now, I would rank it a 4.2, like a 4 to a 4.2. The only reason is because, number one, and again, not the fault of the anime itself, but we still don't have a grasp on everything that's going on. It's still early, you know what I'm saying? So there's that. And we haven't met our real antagonist just yet. So it's just between those two things, really. And again, it's early on in the season, you know, so it makes sense, but that's the only reason. But again, a 4 out of 5 ain't bad. 4.2 out of 5 ain't bad. You know what I'm saying? Solo Leveling, man, very good. Much watch. If you haven't watched it yet, go ahead, check it out. And if you guys want to see me do a review or react to a certain anime, you guys let me know in the comment section below. Got no problem doing that for you. You guys can let me know in the comment section below, where would you guys rank Solo Leveling right now? But either way, I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. All right? Peace.